Hello, everybody. Welcome to Everything in Moderation podcast. Today, we were talking about Hungary and how it is a good place for families if you're Hungarian. Who would like to start us off?
I mean, I can. So what I've researched on the topic is that Hungarian, their family policy, they're trying to make women not be able to pay income tax. I mean, that's what right. That's what we're exactly pointing to here. Men don't pay it, or men do pay it. I'm pretty sure men do, but like that's kind of like what they're trying to implement now, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. Imagine that happened in the United States. But like their taxation system, I have to say, is a lot different than ours. Like how ours goes up, like there's brackets and like certain amount of people. Well, theirs is a flat rate income tax of 15%.
Yep.
However, taxes on goods, or at least like goods that aren't like foods or like direct services, um it's taxed like heavily, like 27%. So you're definitely going to see that. And capital gains is taxed a little bit higher in Hungary as well. But it's like definitely like a much different taxation system than America. So I want to say, like, why is that? I know their population is 9 million, right? There's a lot of countries around them that are just 10 times more um people in the country, and you can see it, and well, at least we know that when economies have more people in it, they scale to grow to that size, and you'll see more business, and the GDP will increase.
Yep. That's you hit the nail on the head there. So one of these things, this was brought about by Prime Minister Viktor Orban's 7-point family protection plan. I'm gonna bring it up on the screen right now just so we can all look it over real quickly. Forgive the amount of tabs. So, right, we have government will introduce an allowance for young married couples aiming at encouraging them to have children. Preferential loans available under the already established Family Housing Benefit Scheme will be extended. Up until now, the government has provided mortgage repayment relief of 1 million forints for large families when a third child is born, and a further 1 million forints for each subsequent child. Jesus Christ, that's a lot. We do have to remember that the Hungarian currency is equivalent, like 1 forint, I think that's how you pronounce it, is equal to 3 cents. So not exactly the the best
Same.
thing on paper, but you also have to look at it, and Hungarian cost of living is very, very cheap compared to the US. So if you look at it that way, it makes it seem a little bit more manageable.
That's very interesting. I've never really seen a country like this, like that's so nationalist, but like they have a strong social safety net.
Yeah,
I've never seen a country like that.
this is like a paleocon's wet dream right here. So I mean, explains why Tucker Carlson literally had an interview with Viktor Orban a couple days ago. It was on August 5th. Good interview. It's on Fox if you want to go watch it. Don't get me wrong. There's a little bit of Fox talking points in there, but what Viktor Orban was saying
I
was
love
all very
Fox
good.
talking points. I love them.
Like, okay, so the clip that Tucker played for Viktor Orban was like Joe Biden calling it's like, yeah, we have the leaders of Poland, Belarus, and Hungary who are like letting thugs be the majority population. And the Tucker Carlson's like, Joe Biden just called you a thug. What do you think? And I'm just like, Tucker, that's just not what he said. But either way,
Belarus deserves criticism, though.
Yeah,
Belarus is just
but
really. I don't even understand how it even exists still.
The thing is like, in terms of Western Europe and even in the United States, Hungary is one of those countries where they are constantly seen as racist, xenophobic, and sexist all at the same time. And not a very good mix in today's world. But it's interesting though, and they say it's like, oh, this is a totalitarian regime, um, which you could somewhat argue that, but the other things, it's a little different because I always say that if you look at Hungary from like an American lens, of course it seems racist, sexist, and xenophobic because you're looking at it with American values and not with um, what how they would look at it. And you have to realize, Danny mentioned the population. That's 9 million. There's more people in the state of New Jersey, I think. So the the most pressing concern for them is retaining their national identity. And this is why I think policies such as these were implemented so that um, more Hungarian children will be born to continue on the legacy of this country that's been around for many, many years, obviously. And, it didn't get that way through diversity and inclusion. It, it got there by being really closely knit and just withstanding the test of time.
Do they have any minority population?
They do.
Are they structured like Maine? If anyone knows that demographic.
I think it. You know what's funny? I'm going to Maine like in a month from now or something, and I was saying like, oh, Hungary's population is probably just like Maine.
I hope you enjoy Maine as much as I did. This does align with our past conversation. For the viewers, they can go view our conversation on Poland in terms of the benefits to strengthening one national identity and the population there, but then also the misperceptions and the negatives of that. Because right now we're not talking about immigration here. We're not talking about an increase there opening of borders. We're talking about incentivizing women to have 4 babies of their own, to boost that economy, to increase their population and their national identity. So what we want to do is unravel other reasons why.
I'm still looking for that demographic breakdown, but I did see.
I got one right here.
You got one?
I was looking. So according to the results of the 2011 census, it's way back, so I don't know if it's changed, but it's probably similar. Of more than 9.9 million. Minorities included Roma, 3.2%, Germans, 1.9%, Slovaks, 0.4%, Romanians, 0.4%, Croats, 0.3%, as well as Serbs, Ukrainians, and Poles. So it sounds like a lot more Eastern people. And, here's the one thing I will say. Nationalism is like like you have a pot with water in it and you put it on low. Okay. You put you're imagine you're sitting in there, okay? As long as it's on low, you're gonna have a nice, tub, right? You're chillax. But if you start putting it up, you're gonna start burning. Okay. And we've seen that with countries and countries before. However, what they're doing here, I definitely think it's an objectively good thing. I think a lot, I would cautiously say that maybe it's not a good thing that more people are around, but as for an economy, as an objective goal, more people means more money for an economy. So it's definitely, a smart decision for Hungary to do this. But I would caution the use of nationalism. I mean, America does it pretty good, but you see the problems that nationalism has in our country, like firsthand. You just don't want it to get, turned up the heat. You don't want it to get to the point where some really bad shit's happening. I would say that one of those areas where that's happening is Israel, where they've turned it up a little too much and they're on that level and they're just going back and forth with it. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to see where Hungary is on that scale. I mean, listen, LGBT rights there are practically non-existent, but that's mostly due to um, that's the population's general want because they're mostly hyper-religious Roman Catholics. So, that's conflict of interest right there. And then that's the thing. So like we look at it and we're we're concerned in certain cases with what we hear from Hungary, but most of the population agrees with the policies that are being made because this is kind of how it goes in like a homogeneous society. It's a little easier because more people are on the same page. The only party that threatens the Fidesz party, which is the one that Viktor Orban is a part of, is a coalition of former communist parties. So that's interesting. You have the second most popular party, a coalition of communist parties from the 80s.
That's so funny because we call what they're doing right now communism in America, and then there's a communist party that's.
But
It's like it doesn't make sense to me. Man.
It's interesting in the way too, because like you're not seeing something like in China or in Russia where political opponents just get, they disappear. Hungary, it's not there's no issue that they have this different stance, and it seems like this is kind of, even though they, like Joe Biden said that Hungary is just not a democracy, it's an authoritarian regime. It sounds like that's pretty good authoritarian regime if the other party's not getting absolutely slaughtered just for having a different idea. So
Yeah, they're classified as a parliamentary republic, which is interesting. I know you look at the UK and similar Western countries, they have more of a parliamentary system. So how that plays into the difference between their democracy and ours might show a little more force, because they don't have as many set rules. They have a little more enforcement with the leaders there involved. I'm not sure how developed their constitution is. Not all countries really have a constitution, like the United States, like South Africa. But it's a little stretch, I would say, to say that they're full on that suppressive or repressive rather.
I've been reading a little bit more about Hungary. They were being oppressed by the Soviet, no, not, I guess it wasn't the Soviet Union at the time, but there was, well, yeah, it still was in 1991, right? Soviet Union was still around.
Mm-hmm.
They were occupying that state. So I find it strange that communists are even like having anything going anywhere if they're, because they they just escaped it 47 years occupation of their state from the Soviet Union. So maybe that would explain that has happened a lot,
Yeah, they might have stuck around, Danny.
Yeah.
Another thing I looked up about Hungary that I think is better to talk about, because I mean personally I don't know how I feel about this tax exempt for a larger family, but Orban offered university scholarships to those who promised to stay in Hungary, and we've been talking about, the migration problem has been a problem in all of Europe, and especially in Eastern Europe. So I think that kind of policy is more promising to people in Hungary, in my personal opinion, rather than the incentivizing women to have over 4 children.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. It's definitely a weird policy. What it reminds me of? It reminds me of and I don't want to put it in a bad frame because this is definitely not connected, okay? But Hitler used to have camps for women and promote it. Obviously, this is not the same. This is just a financial incentive, but it's still incentivizing birth in a nationalistic setting. If it was just hey, you get a tax exemption, but they just say we're trying to do this to maybe increase your growth or whatever, say GDP, maybe that would make sense. But they directly said it was because we were trying to increase the ethno-state that is Hungary.
Yeah, I think it's very transparent too, in my opinion. So and I guess it goes with the people, because if the people can see, at least the hungry people can see that, the government is being a sort of transparent with them, I think that that's more appreciative than, going around it and not saying that it's for that reason. So I think that's very important to know, thinking about it through that lens.
I think that Viktor Orban's like one of those guys that you could almost say is like a modest Trump, if you could kind of make that imagination.
I can't.
Yeah, no,
Not as
I
handsome. I don't know.
can't.
he's so listen, like he's like one of I mean, I guess Putin would probably be a better like in terms of demeanor, like something like
Oh,
that. Just
okay.
like stone cold, will literally tell you like straight up to your face, like what's going on here. Doesn't really beat around the bush, doesn't like use big words, just speak very plainly. And I think that kind of adds to that transparency thing that Maria spoke about. And like that was one of the things that drew people to Trump a lot was he sounded like the average like human being, like he was using words that everyone could understand. Um, so I actually just wanted to show everyone here and our viewers what the parliament seats in Hungary look like at the moment. So as we can see, Fidesz absolutely crushes the majority of the parliament and national assembly. Um, the party with the second most seats is Jobbik, Movement for a Better Hungary. This is a radical far right party that hates Jews. Yeah, but literally in its
Wow.
thing, anti-Semitic, radical patriotic Christian party. So
A lot of parties.
yeah, and then the Socialist Party, as we mentioned right here, was the third. So that actually fell in the last election for the National Assembly. That fell. They lost 10 seats.
Wait, but I mean, let's just talk about the 20% from that second party and then its rise right there. There's talks that more radical groups are coming out during the COVID period, so that's just an interesting thing to take in right there. Over 1 million votes.
I also wanted to talk about the greatest political party that has ever existed in the history of the universe, the Hungarian two-tailed dog. All right. So every candidate for the Hungarian two-tailed dog party, his name is István Nagy. So all the electoral candidates are called Nagy István, which means Stephen Big, the equivalent of English John Smith. So it's two really common names. They actually have a seat in some of the Budapest assemblies, which is hysterical. It's just a complete meme. It's great. There's a fun video of like a smaller YouTuber like going over like the Hungarian politics, and it's by far like just the way he speaks about it is just hysterical. So as we can see here, the only three parties that really matter are these three right here, and Fidesz has a very large margin of the seats. It's a right-wing national conservative political alliance of two political parties in Hungary, the Fidesz and Civic Alliance. So
do they draw a lot from religion within their government? Like, is their constitution tied to religion?
So I don't know about the Constitution itself, but it seems a lot of the policies are made to promote religion, or at least curb modernism. So like, what was it? I think Viktor Orban proposed a policy to remove like LGBT children books from like libraries, to like ban them, so that like stuff like that aren't like Hungarian youth aren't subject to reading that, since that's not in his and his party's interest for the country.
It's funny. Let's look it up. This sounded a lot like something I was reading back, like in the history of Hungary, and they've done like crusades before.
Mhm.
Like they are very tied. Like the history of their country is very tied to religion. So I wonder if that had a really big effect on them after the Soviet Union control, right? Because that was suppressed for so long, 47 years, and now it's just rising. I definitely like this policy. I worry about the state,
Yeah.
because whenever I see that a state is what was that again? I think it was if any state that practices right-wing populism needs to be very careful because they're
Mhm.
skating on thin ice, you
Mhm.
know, because every single time we hear that, you know, just think of the countries. It's almost like, you know, how we always talk about Venezuela and communism, Colombia, same thing, you know. There's just different sizes, the spectrum. You just don't want to cross into the fire.
Yeah, great point. And I did like Danny's metaphor, so I actually put a photo there for fun. But that's a good point. You don't want to go a little too far. Uh, but I mean, they want to get that population up. They want to keep their nationality, and they want to have this slow rise after the detriment that fell under them under that suppression. So, and this is the result. Catholicism, 62%. That's surprising. I thought it'd be a little higher.
Do we have like mini Hungarian policy in this new infrastructure bill? Because we're getting tax credits for children now.
Joe
So
Biden based.
Joe Biden Hungarian.
Just called Orban a thug, but also follows his policy.
He's actually from Hungary. Yeah, no.
Also, I'd like to take a big opportunity to say fuck you to George Soros. Patrick had him as his background for a couple
I
minutes.
did. I'm not afraid to have it as my background. I just accidentally changed it to something lighter. Yeah.
What else do we want to talk about? We have like a little less than 10 minutes here. Do we want to talk? Well, actually, let's actually talk about what effects this policy has had since it's been implemented, because it's been a couple of years now.
That's okay.
Yeah, so birth rates have largely stayed the same, but I was reading that it's more important to look at how many women are getting married instead. And more women are getting married since this policy was introduced, because not only we have to remember that even when they're married, they get some sort of credit to incentivize and give them a cushion to be able to have their first child. So then there was that. And also, very interesting, just over, just over 10 years ago, um, induced abortion ratio per 100 live birth was 44.8 in 2010, which meant that almost like a lot of children were aborted 10 years ago, and beyond that. So that the reason why abortion was a big thing back those years ago was because it just wasn't financially feasible to have a child. So no point to bring it into the world.
And
But
do you know about the marriage rate back then? Because I mean, a big conservative point is usually if you're married, then you have the kids, then that's more feasible. Because that, I mean, I'm thinking about Maria's point saying the 4 babies might be too much, and then the Helgas and all of them are having a struggle to even get there. So there's no increase at all.
mhm.
I think that
You know, one thing I want to bring up about this, I feel like the Hungarian government doesn't even like really care too much about women, because I guarantee you, you ask any woman who's had 4 kids, what's that's like and what it's like raising 4 kids. It's hard, you know, and you should never like. It's weird, like incentive wise, but like at least what I'm looking up now, Hungary doesn't have the best record when it comes to domestic violence. Um, so like I feel like it's maybe a little bit of that will go into this, and I hope it doesn't. But like maybe men will be forcing women to get married and have kids more.
Mhm.
Why? Because they can have more income, you know. So I feel like some like stuff like that's gonna happen. But I have to say, in the eyes of the government, this is perfect. They have to like you would be growing your tax income by so much, and you'd be growing your economy in like that relative area, and you can really become a big player. So I definitely don't see a problem with it on that scale.
One of the concerns that I saw, and then we'll get to Maria real quick. I just wanted to just put it to say something real quick. One of the concerns that I saw was that once they meet their target of like a certain amount of birth rate, or they reach a population that they're happy with, this aid will be suspended. That was a major concern that I saw. Maria, what were you gonna say?
Yeah. Oh, I'm actually, you kind of led me to what I was gonna say next, and that's like, what plans like Orban would have, once it's been another 2-3 years, and hypothetically, let's say, more women were having kids, like the birth rate could go up. What happens after they have those 4 kids? They're going to need lots of government support. So, to see if like the prime minister or the government is going to help these families with programs like daycare and like childcare, because it's not easy raising 4 kids, even if you are tax exempt. I think that it would take, at least from a woman's perspective and like a mother, almost their entire lifetime to raise the 4 kids. And, it's a full-time job. So, once you reach that age of retirement, then, that's about it. But you raised your kids your whole life. So that's something I wanted to definitely bring up.
One of the interesting things though is that you get paid an additional sum of money for each child that you have. So even if you just decided on 2 or 3, you're still getting some sort of aid, especially in the first few years of their life. But if you to get the big prize, you need 4. So that's pretty much all we have time for today, unfortunately. But this was a good topic, and I think that this will be something we can bring up in the future and just see how this goes. Because I don't really have there's not too much data yet since it's a largely new policy within the last 5 years, meaning. But seeing like how this affects Hungary long term would be very intriguing. So thank you everyone for joining, and we will see you all next week. Thank you.
Oh yeah, it was great to see you guys. Have a good day.
Have a
Bye.
good one.
Bye, Patrick.